Jerry,
Yes, sir. How are you
how,
doing?
how you doing?
Good. Very good. Very good.
Good. All right. Enjoying the nice Toronto weather?
Well, I am now. I mean, it's been crazy up until now because tax deadline was last night at midnight, so I haven't seen much of the sun. So, but now I am.
Well, yeah, it's that's right. So you must have a nice breather now, getting your first tax deadline out of the way. Was it a very busy season for you?
Yeah, crazy, crazy. Right up until 11:50 last night. So it was very busy. Deadline number one is gone. Well, number two, and now there's June 15th coming up, and then June 30th coming up. So
Right.
June 15th for self-employed, and June 30th for all your corporations that have December year end. So
Right.
crazy time of year, but anyway, it's all good.
Busy time of year. So Jerry, let's jump right into things. Last week or 2 weeks ago we introduced our tax segment. We gave people an opportunity to ask questions, and we would invite them to do so again. The introductory segment, we're gonna pick up with some of the tax questions that we didn't get around to last time, and there were also some new ones. And if people want to type in the Q&A if they have questions, they're welcome to do so. So that's going to take us till around a quarter after or 20 after. We're going to just talk a little bit about mortgages and seniors, and then we're going to bring Barry Lebo on. Barry Lebo is a very, very experienced real estate veteran. He's been had so many different roles in the industry, so I'll do a proper introduction to him later. We're going to talk about the seniors market, and then we're going to bring in Maria Recruit, Roger Auger, and also Lena Gurgis to talk about managing properties through COVID, and also short-term rentals, which is a very hot topic and something that I'm extremely interested in myself. So that's the plan for today. So without further ado, Jerry, let's jump right in here.
Yeah, yeah, it's great to, as mentioned last time, so Tax Talk we call it, which is an opportunity for people to ask questions. I'm a chartered professional accountant in public practice, so I work with taxes every day, so here's your chance to ask any questions you want. Yeah, so that's the format. You know, tax is your biggest expense, so hopefully I'm trying to help you learn a little bit about it and answer some questions.
Okay,
I think we have some questions come in, David, I think.
Yeah,
So
we do. We have some questions. So the first one had to do with fortress losses, like people who invested in syndicated mortgage.
yeah.
And if it's in
Any
a
specifics? Any specifics or?
yeah, if it's in a registered account, it's a total loss. Suppose the investment was not in a registered account. Could this be claimed as a capital loss or business loss?
Okay, so Fortress. So that would be syndicated mortgages, as most of us probably know. Most of us probably know the Fortress story, which is unfortunate because syndicated mortgages themselves aren't as bad as they're perceived to be once we add Fortress to the equation. But yeah, inside of an RSP, whatever's lost is lost. The value of your RSP goes down. You know, it may or may not ever recover. And that's, you know, that's as simple as that. It certainly affects the payout when we convert RSPs to RIFs. If there's nothing in there, there's nothing to pay out. So that's reasonably simple what happens inside of an RSP. Outside of an RSP, it's much more complicated. There's different treatments for these syndicated mortgage losses. Depends how they're structured. If they are corporate structures, if they're corporate structures, then we have the ability to claim what's called an allowable business investment loss, which is a loss that can be claimed against all other income. So that's one option. Another option is that we can claim it as a complete business loss, which once again, it is deductible against all other income that you may have. CRA, it's one of those gray areas as far as the, you know, how CRA treats it compares to how we want to treat it. CRA will probably look at these type of losses as a capital loss. A capital loss is a loss that can only be applied against capital gains. It cannot be applied against your other income. So Most of these losses I found do qualify for a normal business loss, or at least an allowable business investment loss, so we can deduct it against any other income that you have. So when we do have CRA trying to take the position it's a capital loss, then we challenge them on it. A lot of times we win, sometimes we don't, depending how the actual mortgage is structured inside the syndication. Hope that helps.
Okay, very good, Jerry. Thank you for that. The next question was personal mortgages in personal registered accounts, non-arm's length. Are there restrictions to this, i.e. must be owner occupied or a second residence such as a cottage, or can one have mortgages for personal rental properties held in their LIRA, RRSP, life income fund, etc.?
Okay, that's a loaded one. Okay, so I'll take half hour. I'll take half hour to answer that one. No, I won't. So let's just start with the basics. So some people know this. Everybody should know this. You can hold a mortgage inside of your registered plan. Registered plan being your LIRA or your RSP. So yes, you can hold a mortgage in it. There's two types of mortgages: non-arm's length. Okay, and arm's length. Non-arm's length, you're lending the money to yourself, and there's different rules and criteria around that. The arm's length is lending it to a third party, and once again, there's different rules and criteria. I think the question was on a non-arm's length, so we're lending the money to ourselves. Okay, there's three very important components to lending the money to ourselves. One is it will attract CMHC fee. Okay, so whatever mortgage you're lending to yourself, it will attract a CMHC fee. If there's secondary financing in it on that property, it's going to attract further CMHC, so that's a concern. So that's issue number one. Number two is you have to qualify for your own mortgage, just like you would for a mortgage at a bank, okay? So that's the second qualification. The third qualification is it has to satisfy the trustee. All registered plans are held by a trustee. It has to satisfy their loan to value requirements. Okay, so those are the three things that happen. It does not have to be the house that you live in. You can lend money to yourself for your cottage, for your rental property, for any type of a property. The biggest issue with this is the second point I raised, which is you have to qualify. And I've always told people, if you qualify, why lend yourself the money? Go to the bank and get the 3% money. We all want the bank's cheap money. So if you're going to qualify anyway, I'd question that strategy simply because we can access that cheap money at the bank. Now, holding your own mortgage in your own RSP is a real feel-good thing. It makes a lot of sense. But certainly, if we qualify, if the bank is willing to give us 3% money, why wouldn't we take it? I find most people ask this question because they're not satisfied with what's going on in their RSP. How many people have asked me, oh, why I might as well lend myself the money at 3% because I'm losing money in my RSP. Well, okay, so that's a bigger problem. You probably have the wrong investments inside of your RSP. So that's a different story for a different day. So there's a lot that goes along with figuring out whether you should hold a mortgage in an RSP. But the answer is you can. It doesn't have to be your principal residence. It can be a cottage. It can be rental property. It can be any property at all. So yes, you can do it as long as you qualify, as long as your loan to value is satisfied and you're willing to pay this CMHC. On the other option, when you lend to third parties, there's really no rules. These conditions don't apply. They will look at a bit of loan to value, but it's much less strict when you're lending to a third party. So I can go on in that topic, but I won't. So
all right, that's good. Well, listen, we encourage people to call as well if you have specific questions that we don't get to. We'll do our best. There was a question from Lynn. She says, if I work out of my home doing mortgages, how long do I have to be out of my house doing business before there are tax implications if I sell the house?
Oh boy. Okay. So this has been, this whole COVID thing has put a lot of people into their houses, and this is a big issue. And I was going to talk about that too with some other stuff that I've discussed, or have meetings with clients over the last couple of weeks. Big issue. Okay. So the question is, how long do I have to be out of the house? That there is no criteria of how long you have to be out of your house. If you use your house for business, you are able to deduct it. Okay, so that's a very basic comment, but there's all kinds of things that happen. The big thing that I want to bring up is it's one of these gray areas. So CRA, for those of you familiar with a tax return, if you're claiming office and home, there's a form that CRA wants you to fill out. Okay, the business statement on a personal tax return is the T2125. Very simple form: sales minus expenses equals net income. That net income is brought forward to the personal tax return. In those expenses, one of the expenses is your office and home expenses. CRA wants you to document all your home expenses. Okay, only if we talk about your mortgage, it's only the interest portion that you can claim. You can't claim the principal payment on a mortgage. So we can claim your interest, we can claim your property taxes, we can claim anything that, any cost associated to the house. But I don't like this form, because this form also asks you what percentage of your house are you using for business. And I mean, they can, up to 20% is reasonable. I'm not saying they'd allow it, but certainly I see most people that claim 20%. CRA seems to be okay with it. But the big concern I have is you are telling CRA on that form, hey, I use my home 20% for business. Now, some of you may realize there's what we call a principal residence exemption on your house. You don't pay tax on your house. Okay, so on one hand, you don't pay tax on your principal residence. On the other hand, you have this form telling CRA that you use 20% of your house for non-personal use, for business use. I think sooner or later CRA is going to go, hey, you use your house 20% for business, so we're going to deny 20% of this principal residence exemption. I see that coming at us. So I'd be careful using the form. I'm not saying do not claim your house. Okay, there's different ways to claim your house. You can use the same numbers on the form and put that number, whatever it is, as office expense on your statement of income. You haven't told them what the percentage is of your house. So there's different ways to report that. So I caution everybody, do not use that form that CRA wants, not requires. There's no requirement to use that form. They want you to use that form. They're collecting the data as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's going to turn on us one day when they go, hey, you don't get your full capital gains exemption. So very concerning. There is no, how long do I have to be away from the house? But what you do need to know is, and I'll keep it very simple, when you leave the house, from house to first business stop, if it goes personal to business, it's not tax deductible. If it goes business to business, it's tax deductible. If it goes business to personal, it's not tax deductible. Okay, so you have to go from business to business. So, and it can be as silly as, I left the house, I went to Tim Hortons, grabbed a coffee, saw a client. There's your first business stop. Now, if you drive 2 hours down the road, those 2 hours become tax deductible. The key is you got to have documentation. You got to be able to support what you're claiming with CRA. What CRA requires of you to claim is very onerous as far as the car. Okay, you have to keep logs, everything else. We're not talking about cars. We're talking about office and home. So as far as the office and home, again, you are allowed to claim a portion of it, but I'd be very cautious as far as how we fill out those forms.
All right. Well, people should call you too, right, Jerry? I mean, so if they have more specific questions.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Jerry, I have one more, and then we need to move on. Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Is the cost to evict a tenant tax deductible?
Sorry, what's that again?
The cost to evict a tenant is a tax deductible?
Absolutely. Yeah, any cost you're incurring with tenants is tax deductible. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I just wanted, there's one topic I wanted to touch on, a kind of office and home topic, so it's kind of a segue, or from based on the other one. I had a client, they were working at home for this COVID thing, and then all of a sudden their employer basically says, hey, this is working out good. We're going to more or less not keep you at home, but you're going to work 3 or 4 days of the week at home. So they said they're going to spend $20,000 on a basement renovation for their office. And the question they asked me was, can I deduct this $20,000? And the answer is kind of. So the 20 grand, when we have these type of expenses, they're either capital expenses or non-capital expenses. A non-capital expense is just a direct expense. It's fixing a window, it's replacing a doorknob. It's just a minor expense. A capital expense is more of a major expense where, hey, we're redoing the floor, we're putting in additions and new walls. So we segregate those costs between non-capital and capital. In this case, we're spending 20 grand on a basement. That's a capital cost. So technically you could set it up as an asset and depreciate it. Okay, but I caution against that. I never let any of my clients depreciate their homes for the same reason I just spoke about. It will jeopardize your principal residence exemption. What I do in these cases, I take the $20,000, I divide it by 3, 4, or 5, and then we use those amounts over 3 or 4 or 5 years of income tax returns. So we still get the same deduction. We just get it over a period of time. So.
Okay, Jerry, do you have some questions for me? And then
yeah, I do actually. Yes, I actually had somebody asking me about CMHC. They announced some changes or something something.
So there's been a couple of things that CMHC has been talking about. Firstly, they're saying that they see house prices going down up until 2022. They're entitled to their opinion. Could become self-fulfilling to an extent. Sometimes that's the way these things happen. They've been talking about also increasing the minimum down payment from 5% to 10%. So if you are looking to buy a property with 5% down, I would get on that, because that's something that somebody says it's hard to hear me. Can you hear me now? If you're buying with 5% down, I would get on that. The other thing they've done is they're changing some rules later this month relative to 5 units plus. They're saying that you can't take money out, let's say, of an apartment building or 5+ unit apartment building, unless you plan on reinvesting that into some kind of a real estate or making some improvement to the property, but they don't want shareholders just taking out money. So that's an interesting thing that they've done. And that's as far as CMHC goes. Jerry, did you want to ask me about mortgages?
I was just going to ask you on the CMHC.
Segue into our convo with.
Just going to ask on the CMHC. That can't, if they're increasing the down payment, that can't be going over very well.
Well, for first-time buyers, it's going to make it more difficult. So, in the lower end, especially like if you're under $500,000, not that there's a lot you can get for under $500,000, but in the condo market, especially if it is under 5, and even if it is over $500,000, like right now, you got 5% on the first 500, and then it's 10% on the amount between 500 and $1 million. So yeah, it'll have an impact for sure. Listen, there's a lot of puts and takes, right? On the upside, we have incredibly low rates now for mortgages, and when these mortgages are CMHC insured, you get even better rates than when they're not insured, right? So we've got money out there as low 2.34, 2.29 even. I saw. So so that's on the positive side.
Good upside. Okay, all right.
From a parent, but definitely it's not going to help.
Okay. So also, I wanted to ask you, because I know we're having Barry on shortly, talking about the seniors market. So I just wondering if you wanted to maybe enlighten us a bit, or talk to us about what's going on in the seniors mortgage market. Is this COVID? Does that make it harder for seniors to get a mortgage? Are they still doing reverse mortgages, lines of credit?
Yeah. So there's 2 companies that do reverse mortgages in Canada. They're both good companies, and the products are very good. They apply to people who are at least 55 years of age or older. The younger of the couple has to be at least 55 years old in order to qualify. And this is the product where basically people can borrow money and they don't have to make any mortgage payments. They just have to pay the insurance on the property taxes. They have to keep the house in good condition. And as long as they do that, they can stay in the property as long as they live. And that been a lot of inquiries about that. It's a little bit more expensive than your typical bank mortgage. That's around 2.5% to 3.5%. The reverse mortgage rates vary from, let's say, between 4 to 6%. But still, long term, it's a good product for people who want to stay in their homes or who need money for any reason. A gift to a child, make improvements, make the house friendly for a senior so they can get around better. Maybe buy a second vacation property or something like that. So that's what I thought would be a good segue to our good friend Barry Lebo. Let me tell you a little bit about Barry Lebo. He's worked in the industry for over 50 years, and he's worked as a mortgage broker, renovator, builder, appraiser, arbitrator, mediator, author, writer, lecturer, teacher. Look, his head is swelling no, I'm just kidding.
Is there anything Barry hasn't done?
Yeah, I take laundry.
Got it. Okay.
This is interesting too. He acts as an expert witness in real estate agency and stigma matters, and serves as a commercial arbitrator. He's been accepted in North American courts as an expert in more than 500 trials.
Wow.
And he created the Accredited Senior Agent course, which was kind of a prelude to me creating the Accredited Mortgage Agent course, which I've stopped because I realized I'm not a teacher. But Barry created this amazing program, and thousands of real estate agents have gone through this.
That's awesome. That's crazy. That's awesome.
Barry, tell us what motivated you to get involved in the seniors market? Why is this a market that you wanted to invest your time and energy on?
Well, I made a huge mistake. I admit openly I put in $500,000 to create the Accredited Senior Agent program, and people think, Barry, that's atrocious. Well, I had 2 full-time staff plus office and everything without spending a dime on anything else, just paying for the staff and the rent, and 3-4 years. It doesn't take long to get up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. The mistake I made was, at the time I was running my appraisal company, my commercial real estate brokerage, and I said, I'm going to teach real estate agents all about seniors. I'd been in California. I was an American instructor I was a Canadian instructor for American schools, 2 schools, including the National Association of Realtors. So I'm in a conference, and this woman brings me this course on seniors she wrote, which became the SRES program. I took one look at it, and I said, I can't bring it to Canada. It's all tax law. First of all, I don't want to teach tax law. It's American tax law. And even if I change it to Canadian, who wants to sit for 2 days and listen to tax law as a realtor? I said, I can write a better course. And my assistant, who had been also in the senior business, we decided to do it. Where's my mistake? I should never have taught the course or started the association. I should have started a brokerage in 2004, 2005, just to do seniors. And by now we would have dominated. I mean, I'm still one of those stronger people in the senior field, but we would have dominated by now. So I lost a lot of years by being out there teaching instead of doing it for profit for myself.
Right. So why the seniors market? I mean,
why the seniors? I have a slide in the course, and it shows Disneyland, 1950s. Why did Walt Disney, in his wisdom, build Disneyland? Now, understand, Walt Disney went bankrupt. You don't need 4 or 5. It depends on the stories you hear. He went broke building Disneyland. He went broke. Walt Disney was ultra successful. He had won Academy Awards. He dominated the animation field. I mean, the man was a genius. World War II, the training, the U.S. Army kept him busy. I mean, he was a wealthy man. And he took all his money and threw it into this pot and went broke and went broke and went broke. And you look at why Walt Disney created Disneyland, and that motivates me. Why? It was the 50s. World War II was over. The soldiers had come home. The GIs had come home. A large percentage of them never went back to New Jersey or Wyoming or wherever. They stayed in California. President Eisenhower decided, hey, we can't live with these stupid highways. We saw what Germany had. We have to create super highways. And really the super highways were meant not just for Americans to get in their little Nash Ramblers and go see the United States. It was to move the army fast across the nation. So they had excellent roads. They had all these people living in California. Employment was to the roof. And these soldiers had gone back to school and were educated in the aerospace. I mean, if you want to see anything, go look at how Henry Kaiser built 1,000 homes at a time in subdivisions. Henry Kaiser would go into California and he put a cement plant in the middle of the subdivision and build the houses around it, dismantle the cement plant. I mean, what was happening was exploding. Walt Disney looked at them compared to their parents. These soldiers had come through the Depression. They were piss poor. Half of them, most of them never owned a car. If they did, it was nothing. These guys had 2 kids. They had a car. They had great roads. They had jobs. They had money and nowhere to spend it. Walt Disney built Disneyland to attract and to capture and to take money from the demographic. That's what it boiled down to. It was the largest single demographic possible. So cut to the chase, back to us. The seniors are the largest group. They control most of the wealth in Canada. They have the majority of single family homes. And they, it depends on which source, they say people are going to inherit $3 trillion or more. That's what they used to say. I don't agree with that at all. And because people are living longer and outliving their money in a lot of cases. But there's so much wealth. And the other thing about seniors is they're forced to sell because no senior wants to move. Nobody, they don't want to move. Every survey in the United States or Canada indicates most seniors want to die in their homes, but they run into health problems, financial problems, or both. So I get my clients, I've done in the last little over 5 years, during the COVID crisis, I closed my last deal with a senior. It was my 100th deal selling on an estate or a senior downsizing. Now we cut forward. Oh, by the way, I was pushing people to invest in REITs that had senior housing. I was telling everybody to buy stocks in the Amicas and the Chartwells. It was a no loss. It was a no-brainer. And did you see what's going on now with the stocks? Like this. Who in their right mind is going to put mom or dad today into a nursing home with what's going on? So that business, I don't know what's going to be because my business is shifting as of now. I'm regrouping and I'm starting a brand new advertising campaign because I'm going to lose the seniors who are downsizing. I put a lot of seniors in the $5,000 a month rentals at Amicas, Chartwells, or other rentals. They're not going to want to move. It's going to take a couple of years before the seniors feel that they can safely leave their homes. There's going to be a shift.
Well, Barry, I know there's another fact, and that is that there are seniors out there who simply cannot afford to stay in their homes. I mean, what other options are there? I've heard something about co-housing. Is that a new trend?
I moved a fellow a few months back from Don Mills. He was I'm not going to mention his profession, but he's 78, great shape, and his condo was small. It wasn't an expensive condo. It was a beautiful condo. It was $550. I sold it for I think $550, $560, and there was no mortgage or anything, so less my fee and everything. He walks away with $500,000. He's living in a $1,400 a month apartment. not in the best building in town, but I spoke to him the other day, and I always check, make sure my seniors are okay to move. He says he's happy. He's got money in the bank. He's got decent neighbors, he says. It's not fancy. He's fixed it up nice. So that's not uncommon. That is getting to be a lot more common, is that I've moved many of a senior into rentals, not buying something else. And the money's sitting in the bank.
I've heard that's like a psychological step. You go from owning a house to downsizing or moving across, but you go from owning to renting, which is, a psychological barrier.
I've done it. I've been there. You're right.
Yeah.
It's not great. I had another circumstance called divorce. That helped. What happens is co-ownership. Now let's go backwards with that. I'm talking a Toronto perspective. We have lost sight of a form of housing that to me is one of the most ingenious forms of housing we've ever had, and it fell out of favor. From 1900 to 1920s, if you were wealthy in Toronto, you lived in Parkdale, and secondly, you lived in Rosedale. And you did not move. If your health went and you couldn't live in a big mansion anymore, you had to you moved to your country place, or you did not go to an apartment building, because an apartment building was for the poor people. There were only so many apartment buildings those days. So they didn't go. So they had to come up with an idea of where to house wealthy people that could no longer maintain a house, but wanted they started to build something called the duplex. Mm-hmm. Now, the original duplexes in Toronto were on a street, Edmund Street and places. These were 2,000 square foot units, so the maid could live with them. And they are magnificent. I've been into them many times over the years. Then if you drive in Toronto up Avenue Road all the way up, it's all lined with plexes. And if you sit there in the mortgage business, and don't forget, I came from an appraisal background, you can't justify to a lender the income, and they're negative cash flows in most cases, unless you put so much down. I mean, if you leverage it properly, they're terrible. So they don't make sense. Lenders don't, and yet it's the most logical thing in the world. Mom and dad live on the ground floor, and my younger generation, we live upstairs. Now, nowadays, it's not expensive, but an elevator in. It's not a big deal when you're building new. We should have been building tons and tons of plexes. Number one, we would have got rid of the low rise. David, you live up north. Yeah. When I drive along some of the main streets, all I see as I drive are fences facing the streets as I drive, the back. There could be plexes along there. Kids could have gone, it's just crazy. You put a kid in a high rise instead of a plex, they're right downstairs. They could play, they got a yard, they got everything. There's a total advantage to living in them. Trouble is they take up too much land for a small box. But to me, they make a lot of sense. Also, if you want to look at some of the great ideas, Solterra, how they share and what they're doing, Solterra Housing, amazing concept where you share a home, and living together has all kinds of benefits. But I'll be honest with you, I don't want to live with anybody. I'm a senior. Don't look at me. I don't want anybody living with me.
Well, I think if you're moving into a place like Solterra, that's like an alternative to a retirement home, right? Because isn't there like a house mother or house father, whatever, and somebody to kind of help you a little bit? And
there's a caretaker. Yeah.
Caretaker.
Well, the logic is my dad, for instance. Dad was fine. His mind was great. He was an active man. But, his legs weren't that good. So he needed someone. My dad always needed someone to take care of him. He was 20, he needed someone to take care of him. So my dad was sitting in isolation in an apartment. We had a lady come. And then you think about it. Why couldn't that lady feed 2 people instead of just my dad? Why couldn't she do laundry for 2 people? Why couldn't she do 3? Oh, wait a minute. Why does that lady take a chef and then some other lady comes in and they can do 8 people? That's a Solterra idea.
Right. And I guess the other thing is...
Sorry. I was just gonna say, isn't that like, that's becoming common, isn't it? Co-living or a little more, or not? Is it?
Well, you take a box, you take a rectangle or a box. Everybody has identical bedrooms, same size, little bathrooms. Everybody's got the same, but they've got the common areas.
Yeah.
And they pay for it. That's the Salterra amount I don't like, is they pay for it. I would do it as a rental,
Pay
like a
for
life
it
lease.
in the sense, but they own part of the property, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
they
a
have a
shared
percentage,
ownership.
share ownership. I work with 2 Neptune. I've done 63 sales there, which is a life lease, part of Baycrest Hospital. And I like the life lease program to a degree. I mean, there's got to be some logic to it. There's some revisions of life lease. You can never get a mortgage on it. The new ones you can, and you can register them on title. And that's a big change. And they also, you can't rent them. Some of the new ones you can own them and rent them out to seniors. There has to be one thing with life lease, you restrict the age level in the building. You can't do that with a straight rental, but you can with a life lease.
Barry, life lease?
Life lease. There's hundreds of them in Ontario.
Right. Okay.
Hundreds.
Barry, you and I had a talk the other day. We were talking about values in Toronto compared to values outside of Toronto. And it's interesting the perspectives you get on this. But you were actually saying, I think you were saying that it's a better investment outside of Toronto. Those values are more likely to hold their own. Do you see people selling their expensive homes in Toronto and moving to smaller towns?
Let's look at the COVID crisis, and I'll give you an answer that I won't know the answer to. Logic, I grew up in Guelph, Ontario, when it was 35,000 population. We had 2 good hospitals in Guelph. We really had good hospitals, including a nursing school. So we were well looked after. So if I move up Toronto and I go to Cobeconk, and I'm 70s and I start getting kidney issues, but you look at COVID, where would you want to be during a crisis? I want to be right beside, I want to walk over to the University Healthcare. I want to be a block from a hospital. You can't get that when you're living in a smaller place. Stephen, you've got to look at the aging population and the health. They can't go to a smaller town and get a doctor or a dentist. Well, dentist maybe, but a doctor? So yeah, it's utopian. I'm going to live at Lake Simcoe, and I'm going to get up every morning and I'm going to see the sun come up, and it's going to be beautiful in the water. And then, oh, I got a pain, I got a problem, I got this. Sorry, it's utopian. You know how many people are coming back because of health issues? So it's not all about money.
Doesn't Hamilton have something like 7 hospitals or something like that?
Yeah, but Hamilton's not a small, not a small town. It's a big city.
So there's really, but within 2 hours of Toronto, you think there's a real concern on hospitals? I mean,
You want to go to that? You want to? Let me put this to you. If I had to start my entire real estate career over again, from scratch, 1968, the only thing I'd focus on is trying to have bought parking lots beside hospitals. Have you seen the price of parking at a hospital? A guy comes in for dialysis 3-4 times a week. You might as well take a second mortgage on the house to pay for the damn parking.
yeah,
Come on, guys. I mean, it's expensive to. First of all, forget COVID. Normal time. Who wants to drive into Toronto? I don't. I live here. The hardest part of I joke. I always say, ask me the hardest part of selling real estate today in Toronto. It's driving. COVID's been a godsend in that regard. That's the only positive I can say.
Yeah. Well,
I also had clients who they're trying to like buy a house with 4 bedrooms, like a bungalow type of thing, and get 4 seniors in there and try to make that work. It's certainly interesting. I don't know if that works, but it's just a whole other different approach to co-living.
Well, it's also another thing too, the cities, the zoning. I was working with the Anglican Church in my appraisal years. I did a lot of appraisal work for a lot of nonprofits. And I remember a minister, he lost it. I mean, I've heard truckers swear. This guy lost it. They got turned down for zoning at a homeless shelter. You ready for this one? They got turned down for a new homeless shelter because the city said they didn't have enough parking. Like, for what? Shopping carts? Like, it's a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
Like, they put roadblocks into everything.
Well,
You
that's,
come up with a great idea. You know, there's a saying, Frank Lloyd Wright, the great architect, not a very great person, but a great architect. Frank Lloyd Wright is supposed to have said, amongst the rules and regulations, I find my freedom. And I joke and say Frank Lloyd Wright never worked in the province of Ontario.
yeah. No, those problems still exist. I mean, I'm an advocate of like tiny home communities or mobile home communities, and the bylaws. I have one client, they have the property, we have all the investors, we have the builder, we have everything. Everything is ready to go other than the bylaws of these municipalities, and it's affordable housing, and it, you know, crosses, it ticks off every box, and the hands are tied with these municipalities, and they just, you know, they stand up, the politicians stand up and say, we need affordable housing, we're going to do this for it. But down at the municipal level, there's just no support. This happens to be agricultural land, which has never been used for agriculture. So, you know, rezoning that is you know,
My one of the people in a group I'm in,
houses for 250 people that they can buy for $200,000 to $250,000. I mean,
and look at the container. One of the people I'm in a group with, their son did 21 containers in Windsor, where they took those shipping containers and converted them to housing.
yeah, I've seen those. They're awesome.
Yeah, they are. They
They're
really,
awesome.
actually, they're cool. Just don't have any magnets in your pocket when you walk in.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you know,
They'll find you stuck to the ceiling or
I
something.
guess the point I'm making is, you know, because I've seen those container homes. They're what, 10 by 20. So if you put two of them together, you have a 400 square foot house.
Or stack them.
Or stack. If you want three of them, you got a 600 square foot or 800 square foot. I've seen the 400 and the 600. I mean, you know, all the basics and necessities are there. You know, you have a nice little porch in the back, so you know, you spend a lot of time outside. I mean, I don't know. There's not much more that you need, and these things can be. You can really. I know the one I'm looking at and working on. I mean, there's 250 of these houses that can fit in there. The water's there.
Well, the other thing is people forget is that we can't look at everything as a Toronto perspective or big city perspective. When my grandfather passed away, he was the largest employer in a little village called Arthur, Ontario. And my grandfather's plant had a poultry processing plant. And we thought we had a white elephant. My father and I sat there and like, what are we going to do? I mean, I was already in real estate, everything. And my dad was a long time in real estate. And we looked at each other and said, we got a white elephant. And the one thing we missed was it was 10 acres on sewers and town water, which it was rarer in a small town because most of them were septic tanks and well. So he had been on top. A builder comes along and says, I want to buy it. I'm going to build 20 houses in here, 10 pairs of semis. We went, are you crazy? I mean, Arthur, Ontario, that's a saturation point. That's like 5 years of absorption. And we couldn't believe it. And the guy gave us a decent offer. It cost him a fortune to tear down the plant. The plant was unbelievable. And we learned something. Farmers and people who grew up in small towns don't want to move to big cities. Arthur's closest to Kitchener. The next alternative was to move to Kitchener. They never grew up in a big city. They didn't want to. So this guy, not only did he sell them immediately, he pre-sold them all. And then I found out there's builders that have been doing this all around Ontario for the last 20 and 30 years. Toronto-based builders. And they've been ultra successful because they go into these small towns and build what for the locals and without a lot of hassle. The smaller communities are going, hey, we need housing. We got seniors, we need help. And the seniors are buying them. There's a market. There's so much money to be made in the senior field. It's unbelievable. There's so much. I've never regretted my age. I'm 73 years old. I've never, ever, well, that's not true. There's a back, but that's another story. I've never regretted my age, but I wish I was 20 years younger to have 20 more years in the senior field because there's fortunes to be made. And it's fun. I love what I do. Love the people.
Well, Barry, I know the course you taught was amazing. I spent 2 days on that. It was very, very, very interesting. We have a couple of questions. I just wanted to.
Somebody wants something about my expert witness.
Yeah, there's that. There's also a question Deb Seresny asked, is there money for improvements for seniors who are disabled, i.e. ramps going into your home? I mean, I know people can get a reverse mortgage or something, but is there government programs?
CMHC has grants. City of Toronto has grants. Every city that I know of major have forgivable loans and everything else. There are all kinds of different grants out there that are on the table for disability and for seniors.
Okay.
All you have to do look under CMHC about retrofitting, and they will it's on their website.
Okay, very good, thank you. Yeah, and then Don Jones comments that co-housing is something that's more out west, starting to move east. Deborah Sarajny comments that Jackson's Point has a half-hour drive to South Lake Hospital in Newmarket, as an FYI. And then there's a question about you as an expert witness, and are you still teaching the course?
No, I'm not teaching the course. I just don't have time. I'm too busy as a realtor. And I felt it was time for new blood. And the people who are teaching the course now are terrific. I finished the last teaching I did was St. John, Newfoundland last fall. I finally got to the Rock. So I've said now, and a few months later, I was in Victoria teaching something unrelated. So in a few months, I did both coasts, which made me feel kind of cool. And I just got to do California and the States, and I've done both there too. So that'll be fun.
What course, Barry? What's the course again that you're teaching?
It's the Accredited Senior Agent course for realtors, teaching them how to become. It's a 2-day course. It's really a 3-day course crammed into 2 days. Okay. There's so much information. Okay. And we have a lot of people that I can't remember the number now. I think we've taught about 4,000 agents across Canada to get the ASA designation. And some of the people that have taken the course are doing very well. And you see, I'm going to say this to you. Of all the realtors I deal with on a regular basis, I've never met a happier group of agents. I could do double the business I do if I was dealing with, I deal with young people too. I just sold something in their 20s. But dealing with the seniors, the families, the estates, and it's satisfying. It really is satisfying. I hear that from all these agents that work in the field. It makes us feel good. We're actually helping people. It's a great, great feeling.
Barry, could you tell us, and this is our last question, and then we need to move on because we have a few other people to discuss, to talk about managing properties during COVID and also short-term rentals. And you're welcome to stay on, by the way, if you have the time. If you have to go, that's okay. But can you talk to us about some of your experience as an expert witness, please?
Okay, so I've testified probably close to 600 trials now. I sold my appraisal firm to my associates about 10 years ago. We did a lot of normal stuff. I started off in the early years, divorces, stuff like that, the mundane stuff. And around 1980, I got a call from a group called HUFI, Homeowners with Urea Formaldehyde Foam Insulation, which is banned product. They had 100,000 people in Canada had this. Would I come in and appraise and tell them, because we're working with CMHC for the lawsuits, what the value was? And David, I was young, I had no idea. And you have no idea what the first 6 months were like. But in the next 10 years, I did close to 1,000 homes with urea formaldehyde. And I had a file like this. And I became known as an expert in stigma, and then I got oil contamination, all that. So I testified about 60, 70 UFI cases in court. We couldn't get beat. We won every case. And then early on, and right at the beginning, a real estate agent got sued, a real estate brokerage got sued because they should have known that there was UFI in the house and told the people who lost money, and I had to go to court. And from that, nowadays, I got two expertise. One, I'm about the only person in Canada that's doing anything to do with stigma of any kind. I'll give you an example quickly, because I know you're in short time. I just did a house that so riddled with termites, the house and the ground under it and everything, that to her $1 million purchase, I have said there is zero value to that, which we're going to go to court. I have contamination. I have a guy that bought a brand new condo, found out he's right up against hydro tower when it was built, and there's a stigma. And they're suing the real estate agent at the same time. So I do agent, there's two of us in Ontario that do agency, and myself and a friend of mine who we just, never compete against each other, but we're the agent experts. So if an agent's being sued, they call us. If there's anything on stigma, they call me. And that's it. I go to court and I testify, and it's very intense. It's not easy, and a lot of responsibility. And I'm just doing a case now in British Columbia. So I've testified in the States, Canada, Saskatchewan, you name it, I've done it.
Well, you've had a great career, Barry, and it's not over yet.
53 years in the business. I'm 47 years away from retirement, David.
Excellent, excellent. And you've got Barry's contact information up on the screen. If you want to get a hold of Barry, give him a call. We'll hope you come back and join us again sometime, Barry. We appreciate you sharing some great information and great stories with us. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Thank
Barry.
you very much, guys. I do have to go. I have a little bit of a family thing I have to settle. So
Do what you got to do. All right.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much.
Family arbitration.
No. There's a health issue. So I'll speak to you later.
All right. Good luck with that.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you. Barry. Okay. All right. So next up, let me tell you who we've got. We're going to be talking about managing properties through COVID, and we're going to be talking about short-term rentals. And we were able to bring a cast together of people who have expertise in the area of managing properties. Let me bring them on now so that you can see all their beautiful faces and all that kind of thing. We had Lena Gurgis join us at one of our clinics in person a few months ago before COVID. She gave a great talk on short-term rentals. Roger Auger, I've known for quite a while. Very knowledgeable guy. So I'll just tell you a little bit about these panelists, and then we'll get into things. Maria Recruit. Maria Recruit is she's a Canadian soprano turned real estate entrepreneur. Loves vacation rental investing. That's her favorite thing in her area of expertise. CEO of a real estate investment group, a developer, author. She hosts a podcast herself, and a great leader on social media as well. Has incredible reach. And the name of her podcast is All Things Real Estate. We also have Roger Auger. Roger Auger, he wrote this very good book here, which I had the pleasure of reading, called No Excuses. He came from very humble beginnings, built up a great portfolio of real estate, also a property management company. I don't remember how many properties he was managing, but it was big numbers. He sold his company a little while ago, but he's still active and investing, looking for joint ventures and more. Roger, welcome also.
Oh, sir.
And
Hello.
Maria, welcome.
Hello.
And we also have Lena Gurgis, Vice President of Operations at NV Property Management, a boutique-style firm offering full-service asset and property management solutions. She's a business advisor, public speaker, author. Jerry, you and I need to write some books. I'm telling you, we're getting behind the eight ball here.
Some time, David. All we need is some time.
That's all we need. She founded Stilettos and Hammers, an all-women's investment network group. So we have a great cast. Let's start with you, Maria, because we have you. I can see your beautiful face on the screen. What's the biggest problem that property managers are dealing with today with the COVID situation? You publish a lot of stuff, how on a good day, things are a major hassle with the landlord and tenant board. What's happening out there now?
So if we're talking about regular rentals, not the short-term rentals, correct? That's what
Yes.
you want to. Yeah, okay. Well, there's a big problem because the Landlord and Tenant Board has closed up completely as of the middle of March, end of March. Nothing's happening anymore. And but there are many property owners who are waiting for evictions. That has stopped completely. The sheriff's office is closed off also. And the other thing too is some I just had a paralegal actually yesterday talking about this on my show, All Things Real Estate with Maria Recruit, that some people had tenants who were in arrears by 10 months rent, and they're continuing. So we're going to find a lot of people that will be losing your homes, David, because there's no way they can possibly make payments on their homes if they're not able to get rent coming in. So when the COVID-19 started about the middle of March, I suggested to all my followers on Facebook and my association members. I have the Canadian Real Estate Investors Association and the Ontario Landlords Association, along with others, as you know. And I suggested to them at that time to defer their mortgages. Because if they can't make payments, if they can't collect rent, then the next best thing is to defer their mortgages, which they have done. Many people have done, including me. And I don't have any problems with my tenants. They have been paying all along. But I thought, you know what, with everything else that's going on, I'm just going to defer everything. So I was able to do that. Now, here we are going into June. And what I've suggested to people, I started suggesting this in May, is now you need to refinance your properties. If you have equity in your properties, refinance it, take it out, put it in the bank, and live off of it until you can do something with your tenants who are staying in your home, not paying you. There's no cash flow. You don't want to go into foreclosure. So that's kind of what I've suggested to all my association members, David. This is a very dangerous time for any landlord, especially when you have people who are living in your home for months on end without paying. They're destroying your property. You have no recourse. Absolutely. The insurance is not going to help you. The insurance agency aren't going to help you. The government's not helping you. The Landlord and Tenant Board isn't helping you. You're on your own, basically.
Yeah.
And we really have to protect ourselves.
Well, go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Maria, like a lot of these rent arrears, is that, I mean, when the COVID first hit, I mean, the message from the government, I found that very disturbing, for lack of better words. Basically, don't worry about paying your rent.
Yeah, pay rent. People
So
didn't.
these rent arrears, is a lot of it from the message from the government, or tenants taking advantage of the situation, or can these tenants literally just not pay their rent? I mean, most of them are getting $2,000 a month to curb. Mm-hmm. So normally you look after your housing costs first.
Yes.
But it sounds like they're not. Any thoughts? Like, is most of this just taking advantage of the situation, or a lot of it?
Okay, there's many factors here. There's factors of people who have not been paying anything at all. And they've been going in and out of the Landlord and Tenant Board and getting away with things, and things being deferred until later on. And then, of course, the sheriff not being able to evict them. That's one case scenario. There's other groups all over Ontario that are saying, don't pay your landlord anymore. Don't pay anything.
I heard a lot of that. I mean,
yeah. Okay. So then they don't realize that it's within our rights to collect rent. You can't live somewhere for nothing. Then the government says, don't worry about your rent. Well, people don't understand that sooner or later they're going to have to pay, or they're going to be evicted. Because what I've suggested to all my members is, in the meantime, you better just continue sending out the N4s and any other paperwork that you need to do. You continue sending it to the board. They may not be open, but they can they can certainly get your emails in the meantime. So we've got a scenario with a number of things happening here.
Well, deferral is definitely a way to get some relief, because the mortgage companies are on board. But I will tell you from my experience as a mortgage broker, for people who've been looking to refinance, one of the first thing the lenders are saying, well, are the tenants paying or aren't they? Because they're not going to be super keen to lend if they see that the portfolio or certain properties are not performing. Let's go over to Roger. Roger, welcome to our podcast. Roger, I think your timing was very good. You got out of the property management business just before this, like, when did you get out of the business, and where are you focusing now? Are you doing short-term rentals, or what are you up to?
Hi, Dave. So I got out of property management business probably November, December. I sold it in November, sold it in November, hand everything over in December 1st of 2019. And then I kept my own properties plus my short-term rentals as well.
Okay, so why did you keep the short-term rentals, and where do you see, like, what do you do now if you've got short-term rentals? I mean, do you have to convert them into long-term rentals, or what are people doing?
You have to be very kind of aggressive and kind of foresee what's going on. So what we do now is our house we have on the beach area. We went and cleaned it up and did some painting and spruced up that way for ready for June or July when they decide to open the beach. The other ones we did was we actually rented them by 14 days. So a lot of people need to be quarantined when they came back for where they're coming back from, or they need to be quarantined away from the family. So then we discount the rent down because it's better to have something coming in than versus nothing. So we change it to 14 days. And then other ones where we have first responders where they grouped up into a house as well. And they're staying there away from their families because they don't want to affect their families, and they're staying there. And then after they leave, we fog the house and have it professionally cleaned. So we are still making money from it. We're still having it rented. We just have to be very more thinking outside the box than we're traditionally just going to Airbnb.
Right, because Airbnb is it closed now, or what's the
No,
story?
they're still accepting people, but they're being very cautious on what you rent. So they give you a time period. If you rent it before March and you're rented and during the during the emergency thing they're having going on, you can get your full rent back that you're renting for that period. And then as you get closer to your date, it drops down to 75% or 50%. So we had people that dropped out in for May, but we still have renters in for June and July and August.
So, like, can I go on Airbnb now and book a place?
Yeah, you can.
So it is opened for
It is
business.
open. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know.
Was it closed, Roger?
No, it wasn't closed. But they always told people that there's a refund policy that they pop up when you rent it. We were getting a lot of views during before COVID, but when the COVID hit, we got no views. So people are not looking. But you still book it. We still have people booking through it. That's how we did the short-term rental for 14 days and stuff like that.
Right. So Airbnb themselves never actually closed.
No.
So I guess the concern is though that if you're getting a place, like, you're just hoping that the owners have been very diligent about cleaning it, because you don't know who was in there like 10 minutes before you walked in the door.
Right, but we book them 2 or 3 days apart, right? Mm-hmm. So we put it as clean days or whatever, just to make it where and frankly, if you're going to have a short-term rental and someone gets sick in it, you're going to be reliable, right? So we'd be very careful with that.
Roger, is there any stats? Like, has Airbnb come up with any stats that show what?
Nothing.
No, nothing. Okay.
No, I just think outside the box and find ways to keep my places rented, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's jump over to Lena. Lena, what are you finding now out there? What's the biggest concern that your property owners are having, and challenges that you're facing, and how are you dealing with it?
So for us, to be honest, COVID has been really good to us. I'm not gonna lie. So to touch base on like landlord and tenant board currently, obviously due to the emergency act that is now in place because we're in a state of emergency, because of that, they're not able to schedule and enforce evictions, but everything else is still moving along. So we've had tenants who were not paying rent prior. And I'm a very vocal and involved individual. So I've been very clear with my tenants who chose not to pay rent prior to COVID and then tried to use it as an excuse. Just basics of what happens legally if you choose not to pay your rent. Let me help educate you a little bit. one of my tenants chose to file an application with the board claiming that I was harassing her and threatening her. And during our phone mediation, because that hearing was scheduled, our mediator actually mediated my L1 application. So I have a non-paying tenant. We had our mediation hearing for her T2 application on Tuesday. This would have been May 12th, I think, or something. And by Saturday, they were gone.
Excellent.
Wow. Holy moly.
I had two other tenants that we inherited who hadn't been paying. These were students. I just got rid of the other two last month. So they moved out May 31st. Again, same, just explaining to them what will happen legally and how it will impact their lives moving forward if they choose to behave in the manner that they're behaving. Vacancies have not been an issue. We are renting property like nonstop. I just rented a 2-bedroom townhouse in Niagara Falls this morning. We've done, I think, 11 others in the last 10 weeks, maybe 11 weeks. And we have a lot of our student rentals in Hamilton that we have converted into co-living spaces for seniors, specifically women. They're 3-bedroom homes with 3-bedroom basements. And I now have senior women who are looking to get out of certain situations that are now co-living together, and it's been amazing. They're wonderful, wonderful. And I have one house that's got tenants, student tenants in the basement, and these women upstairs are cooking for them. One of them's a first responder. She packs her lunch, they clean for them. It's the most incredible little ecosystem that's being created. So now we've approached the city of Hamilton to work with them to see if we can help place some of the elder people that they've had in some of the like shelters or church style housing that once they hit 65, they're no longer allowed to reside in. So we're kind of moving a lot of the properties that were student rentals over to this. They're longer term and they seem to be working out well for us. Toronto short-term rentals, I've approached the Toronto General Hospital. My dad was initially applying for lung transplant. During that, I was able to meet with some people who, you know, when you get on the list, there's certain requirements and finding housing is quite difficult. So these units that are once an Airbnb, because, you know, you're not allowed to Airbnb right now. Thank you, state of emergency. So we're looking now at partnering with Toronto General and their transplant unit to offer their transplant patients housing.
But Roger says you are allowed to Airbnb.
So Airbnb can function, yes. The province of Ontario in our state of emergency does not allow you to do any short-term rentals that aren't specifically for the purposes of emergency relief. So like Roger is doing with COVID housing for quarantine, that's allowed. Other types of short-term rentals are not allowed based on the state of emergency that we're in. It has nothing to do with Airbnb itself. It's the Emergency Act. So it's not allowed by the province of Ontario. Our provincial laws currently don't allow it.
Dina, how do you find, is the city of Hamilton, are they working with you?
Oh yeah, the city of Hamilton's desperate right now. So the reason we ended up like this, so I ended up with this senior situation totally by fluke, right? I had a couple of student rentals that we had picked up. One of my clients had moved over management and they were a disaster. So, you know, I do what I do and encourage those children to get the hell out of our houses. And once we cleaned them up and we, you know, put them onto the market, I started getting a lot of emails from the city of Hamilton asking if we'd be working to work with them to house the homeless, the people who are in the shelters and this and that. And in the beginning, I'm not going there, right? I don't want to deal with that aspect of things. I find that there are quite a bit of problems that come with that type of housing and rooming housing. But then when we started to get the seniors, I reached out to the gentleman and asked if there were specifically seniors in need because we'd be willing to help on that end. So that's currently what we're working with. I also have a couple of other contacts who work for a couple of churches out in Hamilton as well as Good Shepherd. So we're working with these organizations right now, literally to get these 3 bedrooms. So they're 3 units and 3 units or 3 units and 2 units. So we're not violating zoning laws. We're totally compliant when it comes to what the city requires, and we're able to create these spaces for people who are in otherwise not so great situations. So I don't know, we're having a great time.
Hamilton seems to work well with investors. They seem to accommodate and welcome
City of Cornwall does as well, just as an FYI.
Cornwall,
If
interesting.
anyone's ever out that way, the City of Cornwall loves investors.
Interesting.
This is an open question to the panel, and Lena, it's very creative what you're doing with the student housing, because I was wondering, you know, what's going to happen with all the student housing. But for example, I was looking at condos in some smaller towns like, let's say, Guelph, just as an example, they have, you know, they have these purpose-built student housing like condo buildings, right? And if you know, if you look at like dollar per dollar, like just buying a regular condo compared to the student housing condo, like the student housing condo appears to be like much better value. You know, they're newer, you get more space, you get a bathroom in every single room, I think. But they're cheaper for obvious reasons now. Can those be repurposed? I mean,
so David, I think that depends on how they're zoned. Right. So many municipalities have zoning specifically for things like, so the city of Hamilton has specifically zoned student rental buildings, and these are the only ones that are legally to operate as a student rental. Right. So if these were built and zoned as student rentals, you'd have to get them rezoned. Right. If they're zoned, you know, as an individual, it's zoning that you have to find out how are they zoned, and you go. For us, every single rent that we were charging to the students is exactly what the seniors are paying. So we haven't lost, actually I've increased rents, to be completely honest, but we haven't lost a penny. So if you're able to go in and house just a regular person because the condos are deeded in that way, absolutely. Like, there should be no reason why you couldn't, unless it's a designated student resident building.
well, I think a lot of them are. I mean, I don't know what the percentage of them are, but anyway, you know, I mean, a single family home, it's not going to hurt anyone to change the use, but it would be a little weird if you had a building full of students and now all of a sudden, you know, you started letting in other people. But at the end of the day, the space should be used optimally. So, you know, but hopefully the kids will be back to school in September. I mean, I think they're already
Not in Hamilton.
Yeah, well, they're already talking about online courses, and people are complaining that they're going to be paying too much for online courses now. So, but you know, and I just want to mention to our audience members that feel free to jump in with questions.
Somebody's asking if they mentioned a rental in Niagara Falls. Do you place seniors there in Niagara Falls?
No, I did not. So the rentals that I filled a few in Niagara Falls, and they've all been, it's quite interesting. They've all been rented to couples with a young child who used to live with their parents. And now that they have been in quarantine together, are finally ready to start spending money to live on their own. So I filled many bachelor and studio apartments like that in Toronto, in Ottawa, in Hamilton, in Cornwall, and then these ones in Niagara Falls. A lot of people who have been in quarantine together and were hoping to save money by sharing spaces are ready to be adults.
I'm curious. You mentioned Cornwall. I'm curious. What do they roll out the red carpet for these investors, or what?
So we've personally been holding property in Cornwall now. It'll be, I think the first purchase we made was 15 years Thursday, it'll be. And because Cornwall had such a problem and has had such a problem with absentee landlords, when they have landlords in there, they've got a lot of incentives from urban development and the planning department to actually clean up these properties and to get proper people into rents and whatnot. And you know, properties, obviously values have gone up substantially, right? What we're buying for today versus 10 years ago are, in my world, it's like astronomical prices, but rents are just as steady, right? I'm renting 2-bedroom up-down duplexes for $1,100 plus utilities. Right. And, you know, you can pick these properties up if they're under market, like below market rents at $200,000. So, you know, and the city works with you, right? They're a little more relaxed in permitting. If you need to get certain things done, they're a little bit more willing to help you with city funding.
That's good to hear. I mean, cities, municipalities should work better, more, you know, with landlords and people that rent places. I mean, just they put a lot of obstacles in front of people.
There's a question somebody had, how are you getting renters? Who wants to weigh in on that? Maybe Roger. Let's ask Roger, because Roger, I know you were in the business for many years. Maybe you can remind us, you had a huge portfolio that you were managing. Can you tell us a bit more about that, and what was your methodology for getting renters?
So I've managed 200 buildings, or not doors, like 200 houses.
Mm-hmm.
And some houses had 6 doors or 2 doors or 3 doors, depending on the property. We got all our tenants from Kijiji and word of mouth. We were filling consistently. We actually didn't fill that much during COVID, but because I still do filling properties a little bit, not as much. But when we were doing it, Kijiji and word of mouth was everything we did. Like, but with Kijiji, I'll give my secret out now, because I'm not in the business anymore. You have to put the ads up either early in the morning or just after dinner time. If you put it up during the day, we found that a lot of people weren't looking at it until after dinner. So around 6 or 7 o'clock when we put the ads up at nighttime, and then around 7 or 8:30 in the morning, we would put it up in the daytime. And we would put the ads up consistently every day to keep on top of the first or second pages.
And how do you screen tenants? What was your methodology for that?
Mainly is a lot of it was by my gut feeling. When I met the tenants, you can kind of read them and judge them by their characteristics, and how also if they had children with them, how the kids were acting. But paper-wise, we would have the application filled out. We would do a credit check. We would call not the existing landlord, but the previous landlord, because the existing landlord would say whatever they wanted to say to get the person out.
Right.
And if I really was on the edge of the person, I would actually go by the property they're in and see it.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've done that. When I've got a tenant, I say, I'll meet you at where you're living. Let me see where you're living and what kind of place it is. And
because you can tell a lot from where they're living, right? But usually, I've been doing it such a long time, and I filled so many properties. I filled over 100, over 1,000 properties easily. You can tell how a person acts, or the way they talk, or the way they present themselves when they're interviewing you. If they show up on time, if they're early, they bring the paperwork with them. If they ask questions, they mention LTB, like all those red flags, right? So it's basically just your gut, and you learn that after you meet people.
Lena, how about you, Lena? Can you tell us something about your methodology for finding tenants? Do you believe in Kijiji, or do you have other methods?
So we use Kijiji, yes, depending on the market. Now, are we talking pre-COVID or post-COVID? Because the way that we're dealing with vacancies, rentals, showings are very different. So if I were to let's use Hamilton as an example. With Hamilton, we get quite a bit of hits from Kijiji. We don't do any showings, period. We have video tours, everything is done online, and then we do Zoom video, like actual interviews. They need to fill out an application, and then once the application's been approved, they can come and view the unit. If they like it, they pay me their last month's rent, and we continue. I'm a very different type of personality. So I have found that a lot of the people who are looking to leave right now during COVID, especially those who are in not ideal situations, have a certain mannerism when they're speaking to you, whether it's in an email or on the phone. And I just become slightly forgetful. I become slightly unsure of the things that I'm offering. And depending on how they react to me, because what I'm telling them is not what the internet told them, very quickly we're able to eliminate people. Right? I have people yelling at me, screaming at me, and I'm thinking, good Lord, if you're this angry about this, what's going to happen if we're having? Yeah. So we've been very lucky. I mean, honestly, 80% of what I get from Kijiji is not ideal. We have much more luck with Facebook advertising. So the property management company will pay for ads on Facebook for our listings. I use a lot of local realtors who we put out there in Ottawa. I deal with a lot of relocation agents. Again, we're working with different housing solution providers, but Zoomer, or Zoomper, I think it is,
Thumper.
They started, yeah, that one. So I don't know what it is. I just get the emails, right? So they started using that, and we get so many hits a day in Niagara Falls from that. And that's how we filled the most recent rentals, was through that. So I think you just need to know the market. People understand. And as long as you've got really like good videos that show all of the things that they need, and you're willing to have the conversations needed, there are good people out there right now looking to rent.
Okay. Maria, can you tell us, I mean, I know you're more so into the vacation properties.
I do both long and short-term rentals, so I can identify.
Okay, so can you tell us about your methodology? And also, I'm curious, for somebody who really specializes in the vacation properties, are you pivoting your business now? Are you looking to get more longer term renters in? Because once you get them in, you can't get them out.
Okay, that's a really good question. So myself, I have both long and short-term rentals, and pretty much what you're saying about Kijiji. I started Kijiji when they first came out. I don't know how many years, over 10, 15 years maybe. I was one of the few that even knew about it, because we used to, believe it or not, being in the business 20 years, I used to put the ads in the newspaper. Just think about that, how long ago it's been. And then when Kijiji came in, it was for free. I thought, oh my God, this is great. So I told all my friends, everyone started to come. So now with Kijiji, there's paid and there's unpaid, right? So I use Kijiji, but I don't find it's always the best people coming through Kijiji. I have done Facebook Marketplace. Again, it just depends on what you're renting. And then now Zumper, or Thumper, as I call it, right? So, and I've heard from some people who are property managers in the Niagara area that really like Thumper. Zumper, Z-U-M-P-E-R, okay? And so I've just started to use it now, and I haven't gotten anyone yet, but I'm going to be taking what you're saying, Lena, and just running with it. But myself for the short-term rentals, because it's not only province-wise that we can't do short-term rentals. It's always also in the town of Niagara Lake, where I have my cottage rental, my bed and breakfast. They're both in the Niagara on the Lake town. So I'm not doing anything right now. I really don't even want long-term people. I prefer them empty and worry about my long-term rentals and just keep that empty. And I'll tell you why, because I don't want to have to go and disinfect everything every time somebody comes. I just don't want to do that. So I'm a senior. The staff that I deal with were seniors. So I've preferred to just stay empty for now and just watch how things are going. And, then maybe look for longer term guests. But right now is just not the time for that. There's nothing open in Niagara Lake, believe it or not, David. We're closed. I mean, the town is closed. We're in isolation. You may have some fast food places you can go to, or the liquor commission, of course, right? The pharmacy. But other than that, the restaurants, the hotels, were completely shut down. In Niagara Lake, in Niagara Falls, the hotels are shut down in the Niagara region. So, myself, I'm just really relying more on the long-term rentals, and I've been very fortunate. I choose the right people to go in, so they've paid. They even called me as to say, have you received the money yet? Have you received the money? And I said, don't worry, I'll deposit in the bank tonight. So I have very, very good people, but you know what it is, just like Lena is saying, you get a feel for people. I do everything online. I talk to people on the phone, and I ask the questions, and I listen to what they're saying, and then I only set up an appointment for them to come and view the house once I feel they're the right people. So I ask them to call me the same day I'm supposed to be showing it to them. So I usually put the showings in the late afternoon. I say, please call me before 12 o'clock noon. Once I hear from you, I'm happy to show up at the house. But I don't even give them the address until I know they're serious, David, because I don't want people running around and looking at the house from the outside unless they're serious. So I send them the website, I send them the video, I've talked to them beforehand, and you'd be surprised if 4 people want to come and see a property, you're lucky if one shows up and calls that morning. So then I know that they're not the right person for me. If they can't even follow simple instructions, such as call me in the morning to reconfirm, then they're not the right tenant. And I can see you shaking your head, Lena. You're doing the same thing, aren't you? Yeah, that's how you run it. So I don't waste my time showing up anywhere without knowing someone's going to be there.
Yeah.
Just curious, do you take damage deposits or just last month deposit?
Oh, I take damage deposits.
How,
Totally not legal.
Yeah, that's right. But
but you can ask for it, but it's not legal. That's what I was curious.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
All right, I'm just going to put everybody's contact information on the screen. We're just about ready to wrap up. There was a question, Lena, about whether if individual landlords can hire you at this point.
They can.
They can.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they can.
You're
We
open.
have a lot of different services, right? So we're, again, boutique style. So it's kind of come in and what you require, we can probably create a solution for. It's not one or the other, like it's not full service or no service. So we definitely have options.
There was a question on the screen about I think it had to do with mortgages and how much income people report, and just a quick answer to that is that we have lenders who they don't look at your tax returns and tax assessments to determine how much money they're going to lend. Institutional lenders, they will look at bank statements as opposed to tax returns. And if people have individual questions to do with taxes or investments, they should give Jerry a call. If it's mortgage related, give me a call. You also have Lena and Rogers and Maria's contact information if you want to speak to them. You have their websites and or email addresses and phone numbers on the screen. Jerry, there was something that we were going to mention today that we didn't get around to yet. What did it have to do with a service that you were going to be launching? Can we talk quickly about that before we wrap up?
Yeah. So basically, what we're launching in this following week, it's basically a financial planning program. So in my day as a certified financial planner and a chartered professional accountant, I've used all these financial planning programs out there, and none of them have really given me what I need and want. So I created my own little 4-sheet Excel spreadsheet. So we're actually going to be putting on that on the website probably later this week. It's free for people who want to use it. There's also a subscription service that'll be explained on the website, but for those who want it for free, it's there. I like it because it's a very simple program. It's easy to use. It's really a financial snapshot of somebody's life until age 90. So it's very easy. We can put different rates of return in different things. I'm selling a house, I'm buying a house. We can accommodate all those different events. So kind of a cool little thing. I spent a lot of time building it, and we're going to launch it later this week, and it's free. Anybody who wants to have a look at it, go to my website, Canadian Investment Service. There'll be a lot of information there for that. So that's
all right. Well, I just wanted to thank you all very much for being part of today's podcast. Jerry and I really appreciate it. And we appreciate all of the attendees who joined in and all the questions. And we did our best to answer your questions. I know we did not get to all of the questions, but again, I'm going to just share the screen. So please snap a photo if you didn't grab the phone numbers, and feel free to reach out to any of the individuals. Hopefully you can see it on your screen. And that's it. So have an amazing couple of weeks, everybody. And Jerry and I will hope to see you all back in 2 weeks, again on Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. Enjoy the amazing weather out there and stay safe.
great. Thank you,
so
everybody.
much.
thanks.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Nice
Thanks.
meeting you all. Thanks.
Thanks
Very
very
nice to
much,
meet you too.
everybody.
Yeah.
Guys.
Good night.
Bye. Bye, David.
Bye, Maria.
Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye, Roger. Take it easy, bud. See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye, Maria. I'm going down with the ship.
Okay, me too. Ciao.
See you later. Bye. Bye-bye.